Yeah, so I'm going to talk about how to become a better developer today, but I'm going to start off with a bit of history because how to become better at something is obviously not a very new question. And in fact, it was Sir Francis Galton in 1869 who first investigated whether there was actually a link between excellence in a certain field and some other common cause between these people who were experts. And when he looked at the population of the British Isles back then, he found that if you were an expert, the likelihood that your family had many experts was very high. And so he thought that becoming an expert, or the basis for being an expert, is a combination of hereditary factors like genetics and exercise. And that was what made you an expert. And this view is actually even popular today because we say someone is talented when they show great skill at something. But this implies that their talent is inherent to the person, as if it's a genetic trait like height or facial features. And I mean, sure, in some areas, genetics do play a big role. In basketball, for example, it's very good to be a tall person. Just as like most sports, it's better to have a body that's more muscular and easier to train. But when scientists said, okay, maybe the same thing holds true for our nervous system and our brain, and then tried to actually find common genetic markers for people who were very intelligent or very good at brain-related tasks, they didn't actually find anything. So they didn't find anything that they could say, okay, these genes determine how intelligent you are or how good you are when it comes to mental tasks. But what they did find was a high correlation between practice and these attributes. And so what they actually found is that experts train a lot. And what they also found out is that experts who were very good at certain tasks could actually not do a similar task that was outside their expertise field. So, for example, typists, like back when they had typewriters, they tested them and wanted to know, okay, how fast can you type? And then they gave them a different speed test, which also involved the fingers, but not typing. And they found out that while they could type very fast, they weren't actually very fast with the fingers in general. So this meant that their expertise, their special skill they had, didn't actually translate outside their expertise field, which meant that it had to be acquired through training, not through an inherent trait into the person. And they also did this when studying chess grandmasters. They like studying chess because first it's easy to rank chess players using the ELO system. And these people usually have a lot of biographical data available, so you can very easily look at the history and their development. And what they again found out is that chess grandmasters, even when they're very young, they're actually not gifted individuals. They just like train a lot and do intense study and preparation. What they also found out is that there were really no chess grandmasters who took less than 10 years of training and preparation to reach the expert level. Even if you look at chess grandmasters who were very young, like Bobby Fischer, who I think was grandmaster at age 18 or even younger, even he just got started very early. And they also did a similar study on classical music composers, and they found the same pattern again, because these composers, they averaged about 20 years between starting to study music until they first created an outstanding piece of music. So but even the best ones took at least 10 years. And they did studies in many other domains as well, like tennis, swimming, and long-distance running. And they always found that a person had to have at least 10 years of expertise and training in their domain to reach expert performance. They even did this with fields where ranking people is much harder to do, like, for example, writers, mathematicians, or scientists, because while it's easy to rank people how fast they can run 100 meters, it's not as easy to rank writers, like what scales do you use, yeah? But even then, if they just look like, okay, the writer started writing and this is the first time they wrote something exceptional, even then they found the same pattern. At least it had at least 10 years between these 2 points. So while even in these fields where it's hard to quantify what expert performance actually means or how you can measure it, these people still had to have a certain amount of training, like their the great writers, the great mathematicians, the great scientists, they weren't born as great writers, scientists, or mathematicians. And so this 10-year rule became the central core of the book Outliers, which some of you may have read, and most of you probably know about. And he basically popularized this idea as the 10,000-hour rule, saying that you need at least 20 hours of practice each week for 10 years to get to an expert level. So with all this background, we'll now go back to 1993, and 3 researchers have just arrived at the Universität der Künste in Berlin. And they wanted to actually find out what made an individual an expert. If there was like more to this 10-year rule than maybe it seemed, and where it was really just practice and experience that led to maximum performance. And they also had a theory to test, something, a framework they wanted to see if these people used to gain their expert status. And they chose to study musicians, specifically violinists. They did this for 2 reasons. First, musicians usually train outside the school system. So if you want to play an instrument, you usually don't learn it at school. You learn this on your own time, and you get your own teachers. And this outside the school, the system, and having separate teachers who are usually very qualified, because of course you want to have the best teachers when you learn the violin or the guitar or something, means that these people received very good and optimal training to get to where they are today. And so what they did, they went to the professors and asked them, okay, what are your very best students? What are the students that you think are going to become career solo musicians? Basically, the cream of the crop, the best. And then of this very small group, they picked 10 people. And for this talk, I'll call them the expert group. They also asked the professors to identify people who were good, like they were not the best, but they were still very good, and the people who usually end up playing in famous and important orchestras. And they again picked 10 of those students, and we'll call these the good group. And then finally, from the education department, they also picked 10 people. These students were not on track to play as professional musicians, but were like becoming music teachers. And we'll call them the teacher group, obviously. And so then the experimental setup was like this. First, they interviewed all of the students. They asked them about their biographical background, like when did they start practicing, when did they first learn to play this instrument, who were the music teachers, how many had they ever participated in competitions. And they also asked them to estimate about how many hours per week they practiced along with the violin each year. And then they gave each of the students a diary. This diary was just like split their day into 15-minute chunks, and the students were told to record what they did inside each chunk for a whole week. And after the students had all done this, then they asked the students to go through all the activities they had done through the week and then grade them on several dimensions. These being how relevant they thought this activity was to becoming a better musician, to become a better violin player, how much effort the activity required, and how much pleasure they derived from this activity. So basically what the researchers ended up with was how the students spent their time, a rough history of the development of their musical skills, and how they rated the activities they did during a week. So afterwards, they crunched the numbers and looked at the results, and the results were very interesting, actually. So first, what they found, all students in all groups had spent at least 10 years practicing the violin, thus fulfilling the 10-year rule. But then they saw something else, because they found 2 activities that all of the students did that the students thought were highly relevant to their performance. So they thought these activities made them better at playing. And so the first activity is something the students not only rate as essential, but also highly enjoyable. That is sleep. What's interesting about this is actually when they crunched the numbers on how much all the groups spent on sleep each week, they found that the expert and the good group spent at least an hour more on sleep on average than the teacher group. And so what they actually didn't do is like slept longer in the night, but they actually napped during the day. So they spent the same amount of sleep at night. But in the afternoon, they usually took about 3 hours of naps per week. The teacher group didn't do that. And obviously, sleeping is well for us. This is not really surprising. You probably read about it every 2 weeks in some news magazine. It's also very well backed up by research. So the other activity they found was to be highly relevant to their performance was solo practice. So now you might think, okay, the popular view of practice is the more you do, the better you get at something. So you might think that the expert group, for example, spent more time practicing than the good group, and the good group spent more time practicing than the teacher group. And the teacher group did actually spend less time practicing than all the other groups. But the expert and the good group, they spent almost like it's the difference between these two groups was so small, it's statistically insignificant. They spent basically the same amount of time practicing each week. So what's even more interesting, both groups just didn't practice like whenever. They had actually two well-defined periods where they practiced. So one in the before lunch and one in the afternoon. Like if you graph this out, I can actually show the graphs from a paper because it's copyrighted. But like you see two big spikes and then in all the other times like almost no practice. Okay, so these are the two activities the researchers found that the students thought were highly relevant to their performance. And there were, of course, other activities they thought were highly relevant, like group practice. But as the researchers noted, the time spent on these was very little because for group practices, for example, you need to actually coordinate all the people, get a room. And so it's very hard to set up, and so they usually don't spend much time doing it. But this still leaves us with the question, what actually makes the expert group different from the good group? Because so far we haven't actually seen any differences between these two. So the difference lies in how the elite group spent their time practicing, because they did something called deliberate practice. And deliberate practice is defined as activities designed for the sole purpose of effectively improving specific aspects of an individual performance. So it's a mouthful. So I'm going to look at what deliberate practice actually means, what the specific aspects are. And for each aspect, I'm also going to mention a few developer-related activities that you can do to improve your own performance. So the first aspect is improvement, meaning deliberate practice is designed to improve performance, which this is really the essence of deliberate practice. And you may think, well, that's obvious. Obviously, I'm practicing to become better. But if you actually look at how most people practice, they don't actually do practice to become better. Because to become better at something, it needs to be what you're doing, it needs to be new or hard. It needs to be outside of your comfort zone. So if you can already do it well, then you're not really gaining anything from it. So, for example, as a programmer, you might want to learn about different programming models, such as functional programming, or you might learn how distributed databases work if you've never done that before. Or you might want to improve your skills in writing concurrent programs, for example. The point is, it has to be hard. It has to be something that you haven't done before or haven't really done before. It needs to stretch your old skill boundaries. And in many other disciplines, you can actually get a coach to help you with this. We don't really have that for our profession, sadly. But the next best thing you can do is find a mentor if you can, because a mentor can guide your exercise and your path. So the second aspect is repetition. High repetition is basically what makes the practice stick to you. So the more you repeat something, the better you get at it. So when you actually have to do it in real life, the easier it is for you to do. But this doesn't mean like just rote repetition, doing the same thing over and over again. Because, again, going back to the previous point, it needs to be new, it needs to be hard, it needs to be demanding. The point is that you want to fire your neural pathways the same time every time, so you can like strengthen them. And we have this wonderful thing called code KATAS. And code KATAS are basically perfect for this purpose because these are programming exercises designed for practicing and repetition. And I'll link to a few in the resources so you can do them yourself. But it's very important that you don't just repeat the same few katas all the time, because the katas must still be challenging, because otherwise you won't actually gain anything from them. And you can do the same kata if you want, but if you do it again, you have to put some additional constraint in it. Like, for example, saying you have to solve this kata in 10 lines or less, or you can't use any loops or something like that. So you need to make it challenging for yourself. The third aspect is feedback. Feedback on your training progress should be continuously available. Because while you might think your design of a class is flawless, your opinion isn't actually what counts. And again, this is where the mentor comes in. If you have one, having a mentor is really great because he can give you feedback on your work, and he can guide your process. But since most of us don't have a mentor and probably won't find one very quickly, you can also go to friends, co-workers, or like people at the local meetup to ask them and critique your code. And incidentally, you might also want to consider becoming a mentor yourself, because your skill level is usually higher than most of other people's at something, and so you can teach them becoming better at your expertise. Fourth, it has to be demanding, and by this I mean it has to be demanding mentally. Deliberate practice is an effort of focus and concentration. This is obviously what makes it deliberate. So you don't just like mindlessly type in code and implement the same class over and over again. You have to really concentrate and be inside the exercise. This also actually means that you can actually sustain deliberate practice for very long. Usually you can't do more than 1 to 2 hours per day of deliberate practice until you get exhausted. If you do more than that, you will burn out very quickly. And fifth, it has to be hard. Doing things you already know how to do well is enjoyable, obviously. But that's pretty much the opposite of what you should be doing to get better at something, because it's the opposite of what you need to do to practice deliberate practice. This means you'll be frustrated. You'll be frustrated a lot. And you can actually use it as a rule of thumb. If you're not frustrated, it's not working. If you're having fun, it's not working. If it's not painful, it's not working. And you must accept that you will fail. You will fail quite a lot. And failing in our society is sadly not something that's very popular. And if you see you fail at something, it's not usually a good news. But you have to accept that you will fail, and that it is okay to fail, and that all you should do is look at what failed, ask yourself what went wrong, what can I learn from this, and then move on. And to this, I also want to add, you should avoid flow. You may know flow, this state of where you do something and you're not really actually paying attention to it anymore. It's just flowing by itself. Flow is the antithesis of deliberate practice. It's great for getting work done, no question about that, but you do not want flow when you're practicing. And finally, deliberate practice requires good goals. That means you have to have, first of all, have to set a well-defined goal, meaning it should not be, okay, I want to become a better programmer, because, well, when are you a better programmer? But it should be something well-defined, like I want to be able to write a concurrent program in Ruby, for example, that can serve 3 requests in parallel. There's a very specific goal that you can actually say, okay, either I reach this goal or I haven't reached this goal. But what's also important is that you don't just reach your goal. The other important part is also the process of how you reach your goal, because you don't just want to end up with a working program. You want to end up with a beautiful, easy to read and well-designed working program, obviously. So you don't have to just pay attention to the goal. You also have to pay attention to the process of how you get to your goal, even if it's painful, and as we just heard, especially when it's painful. And to that, I would like to add, it's not really directly related to deliberate practice, but I think it's very important. You should pay attention to yourself as well. You have to regenerate, and it helps to be prepared. We've already heard that sleep is very good, and you're used to hearing that you're not sleeping enough, but you're not sleeping enough. It's not news, and you're probably sleeping not enough, because you should be getting around 8 hours, maybe a bit less, but usually around 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. You can also nap in the afternoon. It's also totally acceptable. And the thing is actually, because I mentioned musicians before, they actually ask expert performance, like famous people who fill concert halls. They actually said that before a public performance, they often take a nap, because they know when they take a nap, they play much better. Their performance is much better. And NASA also did a study. They looked at fatigue in pilots, and they found that a 15-minute nap could mean the difference between an unfocused, unconcentrated pilot who may crash the plane and a very alert and pilot who can cope with high-stress situations. The other thing, which you're probably used to hearing, is physical fitness. The good news is, actually, you don't actually need that much training to get big benefits from it. In lab settings, all that's really needed is about 30 minutes of aerobic exercise, like taking a fast walk, and you get basically a lot of performance out of this activity. You can do more. You can also add strength training for additional benefit, for example. But everything after these 30 minutes is like diminishing returns. The good thing about physical fitness is not just that you will be physically fit, but you will also be mentally more fit. They did a lot of studies on this as well, and they found that people who exercise are also significantly better at mental tasks than people who do not exercise. And they also found good links between good fitness and high mental well-being at old age. So the fitter you are, the longer you'll be able to enjoy your brain. And there's even some evidence that exercise helps with depression and anxiety. I would also to encourage you to take up meditation. Again, you don't need to do much of meditation, like 5 minutes per day is enough, and all you need is a timer and some quiet place where you can sit. Doesn't even have to be the floor. You can, a chair or a sofa is like enough. That's all you need. And again, meditating has been shown to improve your concentration and mental performance, even if you just do it for 5 minutes each day. And finally, with all these exercise and trying to get yourself to become better at something, you also shouldn't forget that you should also play. And by that, I don't just mean playing computer games or actual games, but also just like goofing off, writing code Y-style. So for those of you who are unrubists, this is Why the Luck is Stiff. He's known for his very artful codes. And he basically didn't think of writing code as getting work done. He thought of it as art, like using code to produce art, but also the code itself as art. And you should use him as an example of playing with code without actually having a goal in mind or improving yourself. Because this is also a very important activity to keep yourself motivated. And it's important that this play is unstructured, and it really should serve no other goal than enjoying the activity itself and satisfying your own curiosity. So, to recap, deliberate practice is an activity that is designed to make you better at something. It involves repetition. It should give you fast feedback. It is mentally demanding as well as hard and frustrating, and it requires you good goals. So, my goal with this is to tell you about the deliberate practice, to give you this framework for acquiring and practicing skills, because the thing is, deliberate practice doesn't just work for developers, it works in pretty much all areas of your life. If you want to become better at something, deliberate practice is probably the key to do it, and more importantly, it's a framework, which means you will find a lot of practical advice, like there are many blog posts who tell you, learn functional programming, it's great, it makes you a better programmer. And that's true, but once you've learned functional programming, what's next? How to become a better programmer after that? And with deliberate practice, it gives you a framework for becoming better because it tells you, okay, what's the next thing you can do? And the other thing is, because unlike athletes or musicians, most knowledge workers, which includes us developers, we spend very little time practicing. And almost none of it, if you do practice, you spend on deliberate practice. This is the good news, because this means you will need to implement very little deliberate practice to become to get a very big advantage on your fellow developers, except those in this room, obviously. So, yeah. And in closing, as some of you know, Jim Weirich, a well-known Rubyist, teacher, speaker, and all-around great guy, he died about 2 weeks ago. And once the news of his death hit Twitter, I started reading the tweets people wrote about him. And many people wrote how he had influenced their own learning, like that he had taught them how to become a programmer, how to write better programs, and that he had infected them with his passion for programming and his desire to teach and become a better programmer. And I think he was and still is a great role model for all programmers, but not just for programming, but also when it comes to teaching and helping others. So thank you, Jim. So I've put up a resources page where you can find books and articles and stuff. It also contains information how to reach me if you would like to. And so thank you. I believe we have time for questions now.